Imagine a wall of earth sliced open like an old book. Layer after layer falls away. Clay, ash, limestone, shale, the compressed silence of ages. Then, deep inside a place where only fossils should sleep, there appears a gear, a metal tooth, the shape of a human hand preserved in iron. Not a bone, not a shell, a tool. This is the fracture at the edge of our story. What if history is not a straight road from darkness to progress, but a staircase built over ruins we no longer recognize? What if civilization has climbed before, fallen before, and left behind only a few resistant fragments? Some call it cyclical catastrophe. Others imagine a reset, a great erasure, after which memory begins again. The evidence remains incomplete, uncertain, and often disputed. But the question has a strange power. If even one object sits outside its proper time, then the past may not be silent. It may be trying to speak through stone. Every civilization believes it stands near the summit of time. We look back at earlier ages and see fragments, pottery, tombs, walls, worn inscriptions, the remains of fires. From these, we build a timeline, careful and necessary, but always incomplete. Archaeology is an act of humility. It teaches us that human memory is fragile, that rivers move, languages die, libraries burn, and entire cities can disappear beneath a field. Yet sometimes an object appears that feels less like a missing page and more like a page from another book. The reset theory begins in that discomfort. It imagines that humanity has been interrupted before, not merely by wars or floods, but by collapses so complete that survivors carried tools without context, stories without dates, and skills without the systems that made them possible. This idea sits outside accepted history, and the evidence for it is not simple. Many anomalies have ordinary explanations, misunderstood origins, or legends attached to them over time. But even disputed objects can reveal something profound. They show us where certainty thins. They remind us that the past is not a machine with all its parts visible. And the first object in this journey is not crude or mystical. It is mathematical, metallic, and almost impossibly elegant. It began as a lump of corroded bronze lifted from the sea. At first glance, the Antikythera Mechanism looked like wreckage, the kind of object a diver might pass over without realizing he had touched a question that would outlive him. Inside it were gears. Not simple wheels, but interlocking teeth arranged with a precision that suggested astronomy, prediction, and calculation. Here was a device from ancient Greece that seemed able to model cycles of the heavens, a machine of time built long before the mechanical clocks of later Europe. Its existence does not require a reset. Human brilliance is ancient, and the Greeks were capable observers of sky and number. Yet the mechanism feels like a window into a technological tradition whose larger workshop has vanished. We have the device, but not the lineage of devices that should surround it. That absence is what gives the object its quiet force. A single machine implies teachers, craftsmen, mathematics, trial and error, and a culture that valued prediction enough to build the cosmos in bronze. If this is not evidence of a forgotten world, it is at least evidence of forgotten sophistication. And once a 2,000-year-old computer rises from the sea, it becomes easier to wonder what else may have been misfiled by time. Some mysteries arrive not as wonders, but as ordinary things in impossible settings. A hammer is not a sacred object. It is practical, blunt, made for the hand. That is why the London hammer has held such fascination for those who see it as residue from another age. The story describes a 19th-century-looking tool found encased in ancient rock, sometimes claimed to be hundreds of millions of years old. If taken at face value, the contradiction is enormous. A human-made object should not appear in stone older than dinosaurs, older than forests as we know them, older than humanity by almost any measure. Careful voices urge caution. Rock can form around objects in unusual ways, and claims about geological age can be more complicated than they appear. Still, the image lingers. A wooden handle, an iron head, a tool trapped like a fossilized mistake. What makes the hammer compelling is not only the object, but the emotional disturbance it creates. We understand tools because we are tool makers. To imagine a hand holding that hammer in a world where no human hand should exist is to feel the timeline loosen. If the Antikythera Mechanism suggests a lost height of knowledge, the hammer suggests something stranger, the possibility of displacement. And displacement is where the reset story begins to darken. In a dry jar of clay, lined with metal and sealed by time, some people believe they have found the memory of electricity. The Baghdad Battery, as it is often called, does not look like a power station. It looks humble, almost domestic, the kind of object that could sit unnoticed on a shelf. The claim is simple and provocative. Jars of this type might have been able to produce a small electric current. If so, then ancient people may have understood practical electrical effects long before modern industry gave electricity its wires, lights, and engines. The evidence remains debated. Perhaps the jars had another purpose. Perhaps the current, if produced, was incidental or used in a way we do not yet understand. But the possibility changes the atmosphere. It suggests that technology may not always advance in the forms we expect. A civilization does not need skyscrapers to discover a principle. It may find electricity in a vessel, astronomy in bronze, chemistry in ritual, and then lose the context that made the discovery useful. This is the pattern that begins to emerge. Not a complete lost modern world, but islands of knowledge separated from the mainland of history. The next object widens that gap from tools and currents to maps, landscapes, and the disturbing precision of stone. A map is an act of confidence. To map a mountain range, a river system, or a hidden contour beneath the earth is to say, we have measured this place, and we understand its shape. The Dashka stone, sometimes called the map of the Creator, enters the story with that promise. Described as a stone slab from Russia showing a complex, three-dimensional representation of the Ural region, it has been interpreted by some as evidence of extraordinary ancient surveying. Claims around its age stretch into vast prehistoric time, creating a collision between geology, engineering, and imagination. Here, the reset theory takes on a new form. A hammer might be accidental. A jar might be misunderstood. But a map implies an organized mind looking down from above, translating terrain into symbol. It suggests distance, instruments, and a reason to record the world as if from a height. The cautious view is that the claims remain uncertain and require careful interpretation. Stone can deceive. Patterns can invite meaning. Human beings are especially skilled at seeing intention in surfaces worn by time. Still, the question stays with us. Why do certain objects seem to contain not merely craft, but perspective? And if perspective itself was lost, then maybe the erasure was not only technological, maybe it was a collapse of worldview. Out in the Pacific, Nan Madol rises from water and basalt like a city built between memory and dream. Its stone walls rest on artificial islets, heavy with the labor of people whose names are mostly gone, while local traditions speak of stones moved by powers difficult to translate into modern terms. The basalt columns are real. The scale is real. The legends are real as cultural memory, even if they do not provide engineering manuals. Some accounts speak of stones flown or carried by forces beyond ordinary muscle. More recent curiosity has attached itself to reports of unusual magnetism, as though the city's material presence still disrupts explanation. It is important not to flatten legend into evidence or evidence into legend. Ancient builders were capable of astonishing effort. Communities can move enormous stones through patience, organization, and knowledge of land and water. But the human mind also preserves events in symbolic form, turning remarkable feats into stories of flight. Nan Madol matters because it asks us to respect both. The stones are not merely a puzzle of weight, they are a puzzle of memory. Why did people remember the construction as something almost impossible? At this point, the journey shifts. The anomalies are no longer just objects. They are places where material evidence and inherited story overlap, And somewhere in that overlap, the idea of a reset becomes emotionally harder to dismiss. The midpoint of any mystery is the moment when the question changes shape. At first, we ask whether an object is real, whether a date is correct, whether a claim has been exaggerated. Then a deeper question arrives: why do these stories appear in so many forms? The Koso artifact is often described as a spark plug-like object found inside a geode-like stone, with claims of immense age surrounding it. To believers in earlier technological cycles, it appears as a mechanical relic from a forgotten machine age. To skeptics, it may be a modern object misunderstood through unusual mineral formation and storytelling. Yet the symbolism is difficult to ignore. A spark plug is not merely metal and ceramic. It belongs to combustion, motion, engines, roads, speed, the entire nervous system of industrial life. To imagine such an object sealed in ancient stone is to imagine our own world fossilized and misread. This is the revelation. The reset theory is partly about archaeology, but also about fear. We look at these artifacts and see a future mirror. If our civilization collapsed, what would remain? A circuit board without a city, a battery without a grid, a machine part without the machine. Maybe the anomalies disturb us because they are not only about the past. They ask what traces of us would survive when our own context is gone. In the dry landscape near a salt lake in China, the Baigong pipes are said to run through rock and mountain like the remains of an abandoned system. Pipes suggest direction. They suggest purpose. They are not the shape of a monument, but of infrastructure. Claims around them describe ancient iron tubes, embedded in a place where no known industry should have produced them, with ages sometimes stretched far beyond accepted human history. The more dramatic interpretation sees them as remnants of an earlier technical civilization, perhaps one that moved water, heat, or minerals through engineered channels. The careful interpretation is less certain. Natural formations can mimic pipes. Minerals can create shapes that feel intentional. Dating a surrounding environment does not always date the object within it. But even with caution, the image is compelling. Dark openings in stone, leading toward water, as if some buried system once had work to do. Infrastructure is different from invention. A single device can be a curiosity. A pipe network suggests maintenance, planning, and continuity. It implies not just knowledge, but a society organized around that knowledge. If the reset erased such a society, we would not expect to find its story intact. We might find only fragments of function, stripped of explanation. And that is why the next anomaly is so unsettling. It is not a machine part, but a vision of the whole world. Old maps have a way of making the earth feel haunted. Lines drawn by distant hands can preserve coastlines, winds, islands, and errors with equal care. The Piri Reis Map is often brought into the reset story because of one claim above all, that it appears to show parts of Antarctica's coastline without ice. If true, the implication would be extraordinary. Someone, somewhere, would have needed knowledge of a world hidden beneath glaciers, or access to older source maps from a time when the coastline was exposed. In reset thinking, this becomes evidence of a global survey before a planetary shift. The safer reading is that old maps are complex documents. They combine reports, guesses, copied traditions, and distortions. A coastline can resemble another coastline without proving direct knowledge. The evidence does not give us a simple answer. Still, the map functions like a ghost of memory. It suggests that knowledge can be transmitted without its origin surviving. A copy of a copy of a copy may carry information long after the civilization that first gathered it has disappeared. That possibility is quieter than the dramatic version, but perhaps more haunting. Human knowledge does not always vanish all at once. Sometimes it thins, travels, changes hands, and loses its name. The question becomes, how much of what we call discovery is actually rediscovery? A small stone disk from South America has been described as containing images that resemble stages of human development, including forms compared to embryos and sperm cells. For those drawn to reset theories, the genetic disk feels like a message from a people who saw life at a scale beyond the naked eye. The claim is powerful because it touches the most intimate frontier of knowledge. Machines, maps, and pipes belong to the outer world. Embryology belongs to the hidden world inside the body, a realm modern people associate with microscopes, laboratories, and the long patience of scientific method. The evidence around such objects is uncertain, and interpretations can move quickly beyond what the artifact itself can securely support. Symbols may not mean what modern eyes think they mean. Ancient artists often represented fertility, birth, and transformation in stylized ways that do not require modern optics. But the emotional pull remains. If an ancient object seems to show what should be invisible, we are forced to confront the limits of interpretation. Are we seeing scientific knowledge, symbolic imagination, or our own desire to find continuity across ages? The genetic disk reminds us that the mystery is not only in stone. It is also in the human impulse to decode stone, to turn marks into messages. And soon the question becomes less about what ancient people knew and more about what we are prepared to recognize. At Puma Punku, stone does not merely stand. It fits. The famous H-blocks, with their sharp forms and interlocking shapes, have become symbols of precision in the ancient world. To stand before such work, even in imagination, is to feel the patience of hands guided by a plan. Some observers compare the cuts to machine work, even to modular construction. In the most speculative interpretations, the stones become evidence of technologies lost in a reset. Advanced tools, engineered templates, perhaps even methods that feel strangely close to modern fabrication. More cautious explanations point toward human skill, abrasive techniques, measurement, repetition, and the extraordinary discipline of builders who understood stone intimately. Precision does not always require lasers. It can also emerge from time, practice, and a culture that values exactness. Yet Puma Punku continues to unsettle because it combines beauty with restraint. These are not random monuments. They look designed to connect, to lock, to become part of something larger than any single block. Their incompleteness gives them power. Ruins often make us mourn what is missing. Here, the missing thing is not only a building, but a system. We see components, but not the complete structure. We see order, but not the reason for it. And in that absence, the great erasure takes its most persuasive form, not destruction alone, but the removal of context. If there was a reset, what kind of force could erase context so completely? The simplest stories speak of flood, fire, earthquake, or impact. Nature has always carried the ability to humble civilization. A solar cycle, a magnetic disturbance, even ideas borrowed from physics such as the Mikhaev-Smirnov effect have been folded into speculative attempts to imagine a repeating catastrophe. Others turn toward a more philosophical possibility, not destruction by nature, but a reboot of reality itself, as if history were a simulation corrected by a higher intelligence. This is not evidence in the archaeological sense. It is a modern myth shaped by digital life, a way of describing the old fear that the world may be less stable than it appears. What makes the reset idea endure is not that it answers every question. It does not. It does. Its strength lies in the pattern it tries to explain. Isolated objects, broken traditions, technologies without obvious ancestors, memories that seem larger than the ruins supporting them. A reset, in this view, would not need to erase every stone. It would only need to separate evidence from meaning. Leave the gear, but remove the workshop. Leave the map, but remove the surveyors. Leave the block, but remove the city. That may be the most unsettling possibility of all. History can survive physically and still lose its voice. Return to the wall of earth where we began. The layers are still there. Clay, ash, stone, bone, bronze, iron, the slow handwriting of time. Somewhere inside them are objects that fit the story we know, and a few that seem to lean away from it. The Antikythera Mechanism, the London Hammer, the Baghdad Battery, the Dashka Stone, Nan Madol, the Koso Artifact, the Baigong Pipes, the Piri Reis Map, the genetic disk, and Puma Punku's H-blocks do not give us a single clean conclusion. Some may be misunderstood, some may be exaggerated, some may yet find ordinary explanations, but together they form a meditation on how incomplete our memory truly is. If they prove anything, it is not that every legend is literal or every anomaly is a lost machine. They prove that certainty should remain gentle. The past is larger than our timelines, and human imagination is part of how we approach what evidence cannot yet settle. Maybe we are not living after a reset. Maybe we are simply living inside a history with missing rooms. Either way, the question remains tender and urgent. What are we building now that could survive us? And if one day another civilization finds our fragments in the dark, will they see debris, or will they hear the distant voice of people who once looked at time and wondered the same thing?